In this video, I'm going to fix up one of my students' amateur sounding songs and make it sound big, clean, and nice. This particular student desires to get that big cinematic EDM sound like Elenium, Seven Lions, and Griffin. He sent me the project file to his song. Let's give it a listen so we can start fixing it up. I'll start here in the verse. Let's listen from the build-up into the drop. Alright, so I'm going to start with the verse and work my way through the arrangement to the drop and see if we can't pump this thing up and make it sound nice. First issue I hear is in these chords. They're just very dry. That Elenium and Seven Lions sound is very deep and cinematic. The way the chords are written too, they sound a little bit amateur. So the first thing I want to do is go into the actual chords and take the middle note of each chord. If you look at each chord, they're built from the root, third, and fifth. That means they're in their most basic form, and basic form can sound basic at times. What I like to do is take that third and pull it up an octave for a more spread out sound. That's how I prefer my chords written. Next thing, we have to deepen the piano a little bit. And the way I like to do that is to take an EQ and take a high cut filter. And just dampen the piano, because check this out. If we now add a reverb plugin with a lot of decay is how long the reverb is happening for. Let's do like 9 seconds. And then add some wet. Wet is the volume of the reverb. We get that nice ambience behind the piano. It's very cinematic. So here's the piano without the edits. Now here it is with the edits. Let's move to the drums. I'm actually crazy about the rhythm. It's almost like a heartbeat. They just don't sound very deep or cinematic. First thing I want to do is move to the snare, add an EQ to it, and filter it so that we can only hear the midsection of the snare. And then we'll go ahead and add some reverb to it. I'm also going to add a snap to every other snare hit. I'm going to filter it the same way, and then add reverb to it as well. So now every other snare sounds like it's breathing. That's very common in this genre of music. Let's get to this kick, which is way too big for this deep cinematic verse. I'm gonna add an EQ, and guess what? Do the same thing. The more I cut off up here, the more it'll sound like a thumping heartbeat. I'm also going to duplicate every other kick and make a double kick hit. Now this will really sound like a heartbeat. Isn't that kind of cool? Now the revised verse sounds like this. Isn't that pretty deep? I think it's pretty deep. Alright, let's move on to this drop and make it sound nice. The good part about this drop is that all of the notes are good, so I don't have to fix any of those. The melody's good, the chords are good, but we have to figure out why it's not powerful and what we can do to add a bunch of energy and power to it. So let's pick this apart and figure out where the issue is. To make a strong drop, we need strong drums, so I'm going to start here. Honestly, the kick and snare are spot on, but this hi-hat holds everything back. Our drop will have a more open sound if we get rid of the hi-hat and just put all the focus on the kick and snare. The next issue is that these kicks are way too spread out. Our lead doesn't have enough energy or move around enough to fill in this gap. So what we could do is add energy to this drop by doubling the frequency of the kick. The next thing you want to do when building a big synth drop like this is focus on the kick and bass relationship. His bass consists of 2 layers. He has his sub, and then he has what he calls his not sub. Layering your bass doesn't make it bigger or better in any way, it's just going to make it muddy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the not sub. When making a bass, you want one good sound that does all the jobs. Let's work on the sub. If we look at his sub through an equalizer, we can see its strongest notes are between 40 and 80 hertz. That's where you want your sub bass to sit for the strongest sound, so that's good. The only issue with this sub is that we could feel it, but we can't hear it. The reason we can't hear this bass is because it's made from a sine wave which has no sharp edges like other waves do. To make this into a hybrid sub/bass that we can hear, we would either have to change the waveform to something with sharp edges and filter it, or my favorite, go back to the sine wave and add distortion to it. Adding saturation or distortion to a sine wave will give you more colorful options to choose from. Now if we play back our drums and bass, that is a powerful foundation that we can add anything to and it'll almost always work. Let's see where we're at. Next thing we have to fix are these chords. These chords are great for the verse, but they're way too mellow for this drop. We need to take these chords and copy them, and then place them on a sound more suitable for this drop. And now I have a new instance of X for Serum. I'm going to initialize the preset so we can make a highly energetic chord sound for this drop. By default, the chords now sound like this. The sound you're hearing is a single sawtooth wave. This is one of the most popular waveforms used in synth-based music. The sound I'm going to create is called a super saw. You get this by adding voices of unison to your saw wave, and you get this sound. Isn't that kind of cool? Here's a saw wave with a single unison. And now here's a saw wave with like 8 of his friends with him. And that's how you get that beautiful sound of a super saw. Something I didn't mention is why these chords keep ducking in and out. That is not by default. I actually had a plugin on called Kickstart 2, which makes these chords automatically duck every time the kick and the snare happen. Isn't that kind of cool? I added that plugin off camera. So here's the chords now with the drums and bass. These chords are nice, but I'm going to go back into Serum and add something to them. We're going to turn on oscillator B, put this oscillator up an octave. Make sure we have a sawtooth waveform here and stuff the unison again. Now I'm just going to adjust the volume of this oscillator until I like it. So just like that, we added another octave to our chords. Okay, next we have to tackle this lead. When I listen to that sound, it just doesn't carry much energy. It's a very mellow sound, and it just kind of trickles over the drop without adding much energy to it. Alright, so check this out. I have this idea in mind for building a really cool lead. First thing I'm going to do is add a distortion plugin called RC20. And you can hear it doesn't really change the sound much. Watch this. Next thing I want to do is a little bit of sound design. This lead sound is just a sine wave plus the distortion that we added to it. But remember, we couldn't really hear much of an effect from that distortion. But check this out. If I turn on oscillator B, pull it down 2 octaves, and up 7 semitones, that's also how you can make the lead from Avicii's Levels. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. I'm going to take this lead sound and duplicate it. But for this layer, I'm going to bust out my secret weapon and add a sound from Nexus 2 called Burning Love. I want to go back to the original lead and break it up a little bit with Bit Crusher. Hear all that dirt it just added? Alright, so I need to pause the camera, put my thinking cap on real quick, and figure out ways I can stuff more noise into this, and I'll see you in a second. Alright, because we're going for size, I found some cool ways to stuff energy into this drop, and then I'll play it back for you so we can see what we got. The first thing I added was this. I just listened to an Millennium song, and there's always these extra notes in the background. I don't know what they are, so I added my best idea of what I thought it was. Another thing was white noise that just follows the chords. Can never have enough noise. And then I was even able to keep his little bass growls. And now let's listen to the build up into this drop and see if we achieved a nice big sound. That is a video for you. If you would like me to coach you so that you could achieve the music production skill of your dreams, I have a link to apply for my coaching program below this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video lesson.